And we're back from commercial break. Guys, that feels good to be able to say that. Back from commercial break. Our first ever commercial. We're hitting the big time, boys, I tell you. Anyways, lots of news about a certain defenseman out of the Arizona Coyotes, Mr. Jakob Chychrun, a special interest to Kings fans. And to help us explore what the possibilities of the Kings could do with the Jakob Chychrun trade, we have got a guy who's got his finger on the pulse of the NHL, especially all things coming into the trade deadline. He is Mr. Dave Pagnotta from the Fourth Period. Dave, how are you?
I'm good, boys. It's starting to pick up a little bit, so getting busier, but but all good.
Yeah, it's just like this big boulder coming rolling down a mountain, that's for sure.
Yep.
You wrote a very interesting article over the weekend on the Fourth Period about Jakob Chychrun and possible links to the Kings and other teams. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, things kind of quieted down for a little bit with respect to Chychrun, and it only started in the last 4 or 5 days or so, at least it seems anyway, that those discussions started to pick up a lot more. And the LA Kings are right there. They really like this player. They would obviously love to get their hands on him. There are other teams in the mix, certainly Carolina, Florida, St. Louis, a few others that are trying to make something happen. But LA, Anaheim as well, by the way. But Anaheim is definitely part of that mix. And Arizona's kind of expressed some of the prospects that they like. They really like the farm system in LA. They like a lot of the players that they've got. Gabe Vilardi is a guy that they've identified as a piece that they would want in a package. And then you kind of go from there. But those conversations will continue. We're 3.5 weeks from the deadline as of today. Things will definitely continue to pick up. And it certainly sounds like the Coyotes are set on moving him now versus waiting until the summer. So that kind of gives you an idea as to, where their mindset is at. That doesn't mean they're just going to do it if they don't get the right deal, but they're pushing for that right offer, and LA's right in the thick of things.
Wow, that's interesting because, otherwise, people were saying, well, they'll probably wait to the offseason. So what do you think kind of moved the needle for them?
I think on both sides. I think it's an understanding. The Coyotes had a conversation with Chychrun and his camp about where they're at. And with 3 more years left on his deal after this season, that's right around the time they expect to get back into contention or playoff contention mode anyway. Are you really going to waste those 3 years of Jakob Chychrun entering his prime? He's not there yet. He's only 23. He's just entering his prime. Do we want to waste those prime years on him and then he may walk as a free agent, and what's the point? Or do we want to max a return now to help us as part of this rebuild process? And that's kind of where things are at. And from Chychrun's perspective, I think it's an understanding as well of where they're at, where the team is at. And look, if we're not going to compete now, I want to enter my prime years chasing a Stanley Cup, and it's not going to happen in Arizona. So you know what? If you're going to move me, might as well do it. It's not a request, but it's an understanding on both sides that this is the reality of the situation. It's probably best for both sides to move them. Probably get a pretty solid return right now.
Dave, excuse me. A question that we get a lot from Kings fans when we bring up Chychrun is his point totals this year: 2 goals, 9 assists.
Yeah.
Obviously a massive drop off from last year's production. Is it more, in terms of what you're seeing, is it more things going on, or is it primarily he's just trying to do too much on a really bad team, or what do you think?
It's just a combination. Like a lot of guys on that team, you look at them and they're going, yeah, we're having a bad year. Everybody. You look at Montreal as well. Half their team was having just a horrible season up until the last 3-4 games. But I think everybody knows the teams that are interested in Chychrun and a few other pieces in Arizona. Travis Boyd's probably getting moved. Johan Larsson's out there as well. Anton Strawman, if they could figure something out. Phil Kessel, so on and so on. They got a few more pieces that they would move. But everybody understands how rough of a season it's been. And when you've got a guy like Chychrun, who pretty much knows he's going to get traded at some point, it's a combination of, okay, in certain circumstances, I'm going to do too much. And in others, I don't need to do enough, because what's the point? It's not really going to get me anywhere or get this team over the hump, because we're already down 4-1. So teams kind of understand that this is a bit of a write-off season for a lot of the players on Arizona, including Chychrun. And teams just like LA understand and know that defensively and offensively, this guy can hit top peak numbers. And they're just, it's a change of scenery, put him in a different environment. If it is LA, you potentially have him paired with Drew Doughty. Pretty sure he's going to play a lot better and be a little bit more motivated to get things going.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, that's a given. Russ, you got something?
Yeah, I'm glad that he mentioned the season because I mean, when I hear a lot of Kings fans talk about, well, look at his point totals and everything like that. I mean, I consider the fact that look at how Drew Doughty was playing when the Kings were in those tough years, the last few years, and now he's able to elevate his game, and I think Chychrun could be in that same kind of grouping. You mentioned Velarde, and we've had a lot of questions from Kings fans and what kind of package we could see. Is there like with Eichel, they were looking for 4 top like first round pick assets. Is that something that's kind of along the lines of what Arizona's looking for as well?
I think the overall ask is 3 to 4 assets. To what degree, I'm not fully sure. I'm sure there's at least 2 equivalents of a first round pick, maybe 3 within that realm. The other thing to consider here is that Arizona has 3 first round picks in this year's draft and 5 second round picks. That's a lot. So they may look, and this may be beneficial to LA and some other teams if Arizona's adamant about adding, a proven first round drafted player. Well, you've got Velarde. A first round pick doesn't necessarily have to be this summer. It could be in 2023, which may be more advantageous for a team like LA that expects by next season to be even that much better than they are right now. And other teams, obviously, that are in the mix too. And then another very, very good asset as part of it. And that will determine whether or not there's going to be a 4th piece into this mix. I don't see it being conditional. I think one of the reasons what attracts Arizona to LA is the fact that they've got, like I said, a very deep prospect pool. So you don't necessarily have to wait 3-4 more years for these kids to pan out after you draft them. You've got a couple guys that are established that are, 4 years from being drafted, and they can start to slot into the roster now and get acclimated with the NHL on a consistent basis and the other players on the team. So they like those pieces. Velarde, a little bit older in terms of a prospect. They have some other young kids in the system as well in LA that they really like. So I think it's a combination of, 3 to 4 assets, depending on what those are, will determine whether it's 3 or 4.
Oh, absolutely. And, with 2023, you bring up a great point because there is a kid named Bedard coming through. And they might be very interested in getting another shot at him.
They're keeping an eye on him, trust me.
Yeah, for sure. Quick question, though. I mean, with Arizona, obviously they want prospects and they want draft picks. Would they also be taking an NHL player already on the roster back in return in a potential trade, too? More or less thinking along the lines of like a cap floor kind of situation.
Yeah, they've made it known as well to teams that if you've got a player on an expiring deal and you got to create a little cap flexibility, we'll take them. You got an incentive. You got to make it attractive to us to do it, but we'll do it. So they're going to be that little conduit for a lot of teams that are trying to make moves, not necessarily retaining money because they've already got 2 slots. Every team has a max of 3, and they're probably going to have to eat half of Phil Kessel's cap hit. It's I think just over $6 million. He was due $6 million this season. 5 of it in bonus was already paid, so his actual money is less than $1 million. But it's the cap hit that's the issue. So in terms of teams that need to offset deals by moving a guy on an expiring deal, maybe an extra year on his deal, depending on the player and depending on the return, Arizona's open to that. With respect to Chychrun, I mean, it could be an added piece that's into it that kind of expands the deal. If it means, LA needs a little cap flexibility, they need to move a player that's making $1 million. They don't want to lose him for nothing, or they feel it might be more beneficial to include him in a deal, then they may explore that as well.
Yeah, now that the Kings are actually starting to compete, we're getting Kings fans thinking that the Kings should be in on every player that seems to be available come the trade deadline. I mean, Rob Blake's kind of made it known that he's looking for a left-handed D-man. He's looking possibly for a scorer. They were tied to the Tyler Toffoli deal. He obviously went to Calgary, and they've been tied to Ben Sherratt. Are there any other names out there that you could think that the Kings might be looking for come trade deadline if Chychrun isn't moved?
I don't see LA being a big player in the rental game. Unless something kind of falls into their lap and the price drops. They've checked in on Sherratt, like you said. They've checked in on Calvin DeHaan. They've checked in on a few other assets that are out there. Montreal, Chicago are 2 teams as well that are willing to retain money, willing to take on salary. So, wherever those guys end up, probably going to have a chunk of that eaten up by the current team. So they're doing their due diligence, but unless the price drops for those players, I don't really see LA being too big into the rental market. They prefer guys with term. That's why they're looking at Chychrun. And one of the reasons why he's so attractive is he has 3 more years left on his deal. They're looking at guys that can put the puck in the net offensively up front to round out their top 6 and see what's out there. You know, there's been, so we mentioned this last week, some speculation with respect to Travis Konechny in Philadelphia. He's a right shot. The Kings only have 2 right shots among their forward core right now. Dustin Brown and I forgot I don't know, it's Kaliev or some, I can't remember who else. So they ideally would like to bring in a right shot. But I mean, you know, it's not the end of the world if they don't, but that's kind of the ideal scenario for them to round out the top 6 and then, you know, potentially move more onto the third line with Byfield and Dustin Brown, or move them to the 4th, keep Athanasiou up there. But they want someone with term on both ends of the spectrum. If they can't get that right now, Tyler Bertuzzi, another guy that teams had a lot of interest in Detroit last season going towards the deadline. Starting to hear him at least being discussed internally by a few teams as a potential target. So those kinds of players that have a little bit of term, Bertuzzi has 1 year left, Konechny has 2 more to go. You know, those players in that world that have 2-3, you know, years left on their deal are the preferred approach by Rob Blake and his staff. But again, if we see a scenario a number of years back where the Islanders had to trade Thomas Vanek to Montreal for a 2nd-round pick and a prospect, if that scenario plays out this year, because there's so many guys out there, maybe that's something that he looks at. But I think they would prefer the long game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that really surprised me, Tyler Bertuzzi, because I mean Detroit's kind of on the upswing right now. I mean they're probably not going to make the playoffs, but I guess that's one of those deals where if you can get a haul back for him, you take it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, they had those conversations last trade deadline, just as much as they did with Anthony Mantha, and they ended up moving Mantha to Washington. They got Jakob Vrana. They got a 1st and a 2nd-round pick. If it's a similar type of deal with Bertuzzi, and the price may be a little bit higher, he's over a point a game with Detroit this year, having a career season. I think they would look at that. They obviously love Dylan Larkin as their captain. They like the young players that are out there in Detroit that are starting to really come into their own. Lucas Raymond's having a phenomenal rookie campaign, and a few other guys there as well. They may ultimately decide, if the market doesn't, you know, bear the right return, they may hold on to him and then try to sign him to an extension in the offseason. But I think, based on what we're hearing, if a team comes to him with a respectable offer, Steve Yzerman is going to listen.
Absolutely. So, with all that said, it looks like you got a pretty busy weekend coming up yourself.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. I head to Nashville tomorrow. Dennis Bernstein is heading there as well for the outdoor game. Actually going to be at the Nashville Predators Dallas Stars game Thursday night. Pekka Rinne is getting his jersey retired. So I'll be there for that. And then the outdoor game on Saturday. We've got our show on NHL Network Radio, The Hot Stove, in the morning. And then Dennis and I are actually doing the pregame show for the Stadium Series game between the Bolts and the Preds from Nissan Stadium. So we're pretty excited about that. Should be fun.
Yeah, I love that Hot Stove show. That's awesome. It really is.
Thank you.
and I have to tell you, good luck keeping DB out of trouble.
Yeah, that's gonna be. He's already made plans. He's been messaging me. My phone was going off earlier. I had to mute it. Which restaurant we going to? Which bar we going to? So yeah, he's excited about it. It's gonna be a good trip.
Yeah, what is that? His mimosas he likes, right?
Oh yeah. Anything, if you can get a nice drink with a little umbrella inside, it's right up his alley.
Golden.
Yeah.
Dave, last question, we can let you go. Just looking for your thoughts real quick on Nashville's jerseys.
I don't know if, like, a lot of these different jerseys they just seem like they're like, the first idea came to them, they're like, that's awesome. Let's just roll with that. Let's call it a day. Yeah. I would like a little bit more creativity in them. I know it's outdoor game and certain elements of them have to change so that you can see from higher up because you're in a football stadium versus an NHL rink. But just seems lazy to me. I don't know. I think even like Toronto's jersey for the Heritage Classic, I know it's a toll back to the Toronto arenas, from the early 1900s, but I just felt it could have been a little bit more. I just seemed like they're taking the easy way out on a lot of these outdoor game jerseys.
Yeah, a lot of thought went into that tee. Come on.
Yeah, well, that was their old, that was their jersey, but then they changed the color. I don't know. Just give me a little bit more. Spend 3 hours instead of 1.5 or something like that. Put the beer down, do it, then take the case out. I don't know. Figure it out.
Well, Dave, we appreciate you coming on the show to talk about everything, and have fun out in Nashville by all means, and keep up the great work with the fourth period and everything else you're doing. And you're welcome back on our show anytime.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me, and hopefully, we'll do it again soon.
All right.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much, Dave. Appreciate
Thanks,
it. That was Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period. Interesting insight. Very interesting. I tell you, that's I'm really looking forward to this trade deadline, guys. I got to be honest with you.
It's been a while since we've been able to say that, right? It's been offloading.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I kind of forgot what it was like to be buyers. Although he does bring up a good point. If the Kings are out on Chychrun, I don't know how much they're really going to go in.
Yeah, he might just excuse me, might just wait till the summer then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, obviously you want them into the playoffs because if for anything, like we were talking before the show, this is going to be just fantastic experience for the younger players on this team to be, part of a winning culture again, to be pushing for the playoffs and having that excitement rather than wait till next year, guys. Next year.
Yeah. Yeah, with the way, I mean, the Kings are rolling three pretty solid lines right now, and Quentin Byfield, Andrews Athanasiou, and Justin Brown are getting their chemistry rolling. I mean, with Alex Edler possibly coming back by the end of the season, that could be their big ticket free agent or acquisition, I guess, at the deadline to replace a player like Oli Mata that Kings fans much malign. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And, I do want to bring up a quick point about that, too, because, I mean, one of the things we were talking about when Edler was signed is, they were going to have to manage his minutes throughout the season because, he is 35 plus. Well, the beautiful part is now they don't have to because he's going to be rested.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be basically Alex Edler at the beginning of the season. Look how fresh he was. He was playing 22 minutes a night and he was very effective. So you're right, Ross. I mean, that could very well end up being the big acquisition. Hopefully it's Chychrun, but but we'll see. We will see. So what are we looking ahead here, guys? What's the schedule looking like?
I think a big game tonight with the Coyotes on national TV. So depending on when you listen to this, we'll see how the Kings fare going back into Arizona. But hopefully they show well to the national audience and show that they're a playoff team. Absolutely, and just keep it rolling because we got Anaheim Friday night too. So that's another huge game. Right
it is. It really is.
I mean, even when they're last place teams, it's still a huge game. And now with playoff implications on the line, look out. So, oh boy. All right. Well, listen, guys, I think that's all the time we got. But we want to thank Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period once again for coming on and talking about Jakob Chychrun and everything else going on around the NHL. Again, we just thank everybody out there who listens and supports our website, hockeyroyalty.com. We appreciate it every single day, and we hope you're enjoying it. So, for Ryan Sykes, for Russell Morgan, I'm Scott Kimball. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Hockey Royalty Podcast. Go Kings, go!